Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be able to talk to you right now about soil types, because soil types have great implications on the amount of water that you have to apply to your grass for it to be healthy. It has great implications on your weed control. It has great implications on how green and beautiful your yard can look. And so if you'll just give me several minutes here, I'm going to do my best to keep it precise and explain to you why that is. So all soil is made out of three particles: sand, silt, and clay. And I want to show you the soil triangle that you can easily find on Google if for whatever reason this is not coming through as clear as I'm hoping it will. But all soils are made up of the three particles: sand, silt, and clay. And this wonderful triangle tells you all, or shows you all the different types of soil. So the red triangle, for example, is a sandy clay soil because it's got a mixture of clay and sand. This aqua color triangle right here is a combination of silt, 100% silt, 100% clay. In the middle, about 50% of both of those would be a silty clay soil. And everything in between of all three of those different types of soil particles: sand, silt, and clay. I got it mixed up again. Anyway, you get it. In the middle, where it's more of the brown color, is loam, and that's a mixture of, again, almost a 33%, about a third of each of clay, sand, and silt. And so why am I talking about that? Here's why I'm talking about that. Because in Mississippi, we have clay soils everywhere. In the Mississippi Delta, there's a lot of silt and really good soil for growing crops, but in the Jackson area, we have a lot of clay that's not the best for growing plants such as turf grass, or at least it makes it a lot more difficult. And so with aeration and top dressing, you can change your clay soil to being a sandy clay soil. And why is that a big deal? Again, because sand and clay have different pros and cons. Sand, before I go into the pros and cons, this is going to help you to understand the explanation of things. So sand is if you were to put it under a microscope and it was this big, clay in the same way under the microscope, zoomed in the same amount, it would be smaller than my hole could even make a hole, smaller than what my hand can make a hole. So it's kind of like the earth to the sun, except even smaller. So that means clay is super, super tiny. Clay is really, really big in comparison. And so when you have these really, really big sand particles fitting together, making up, a billion-fold or trillion-fold or whatever the bigger numbers than that are. In other words, a sandy soil going to the beach. Water just goes straight through because those particles of sand can't fit together very closely. They're so big. Clay particles, on the other hand, they're so super tiny, they fit together really, really close. And that means water does not infiltrate, it does not penetrate unless it's lots and lots of water. And, in the wintertime here in Jackson, day after day, we get lots of rain. And so those soils do get really wet. We call it sopping wet. And the water won't evaporate from those soils. It takes a long time then for them to dry out. That's because those clay particles are so close together that it doesn't allow the water to evaporate. Not to mention during the cold time of year, it doesn't evaporate as much. But in the summertime, we don't get nearly as much rain. And so the clay is so hard. And hard means the roots, especially small roots of grass, they get dried out and they're not able to get the water that they need. And so that's why when you aerate, which is taking plugs of, I'm just going to say clay, because when you aerate in Jackson, Mississippi, you are getting plugs of clay out of the ground, and you're aerifying the ground. You're adding you're allowing there to be more air in the ground. And yes, that is what aerify means, even though you don't spell aerify or aerification AIR, which is air, but it's AER, AERIFY. Anyway, when you aerify the soil, if you only aerate without top dressing, guess what those holes do? Those core, you take out the cores or the plugs of clay, you're left with all these little bitty holes. That clay ends up closing back up over time. And so that's why I've never recommended aerating by itself. But if you top dress, meaning you dress the top of the lawn with a layer of sand, then after you aerate, then you can change your soil from a clay soil to a sandy clay soil, which means water will be able to infiltrate those holes quicker, which means in the summertime, the roots of your grass are going to be able to get a lot more water than what they would if it was just straight clay. And when you get more water, guess what happens? You get greener yards, you get thicker grass, you get not nearly as many weeds, because thick, healthy grass keeps out weeds a lot better than thin and unhealthy grass do. And when you do have water, you also get the transportation of nutrients into the plant, and because you can have nutrients sitting right there beside the roots, but without water, it doesn't get into the roots and into the plant and make it healthy and green the way that you want it to be. And so I hope that helps you to understand some more about why we're recommending aerating and top dressing to so many of our customers these days. Why we're about to start talking about it so much more is because going from clay to sandy clay is such an exciting thing for us. And if you have any questions about it, please let us know. And looking forward to helping out. Let us know if you have any questions.